People often walk away from a conversation wondering, why did I agree to that? Maybe you bought something you never planned to buy. Maybe you apologized even though you weren't really wrong. Or maybe someone made you feel guilty without ever raising their voice. The strange part is that, in many cases, nobody forced you. Your own brain quietly filled in the gaps. Psychology shows that our brains rely on mental shortcuts to make quick decisions. Most of the time, these shortcuts help us. But sometimes, they make us surprisingly easy to influence. Today, we are exploring 10 psychological tricks that people may use, sometimes intentionally, and sometimes without even realizing it. Knowing these tricks won't make you impossible to influence, but it can help you recognize them before they shape your decisions. Imagine a neighbor asks you for one tiny favor. Can you sign this petition? It only takes a few seconds. A few days later, they ask if you'll volunteer for 2 hours. Research suggests that people are more likely to agree to a larger request after saying yes to a much smaller one. Psychologists call this the foot in the door effect. Why does it happen? Because your brain likes consistency. Once you begin seeing yourself as someone who helps others, saying no to the next request feels slightly uncomfortable. Not every small request is manipulative, but when tiny commitments slowly become bigger ones, it's worth asking yourself whether you're making a fresh choice or simply continuing what you've already started. Now imagine someone buys you a coffee. Almost instantly, you feel a small urge to return the favor. That's called reciprocity. For thousands of years, human societies survived through cooperation. Returning kindness helped communities grow stronger. But this same instinct can also be used in marketing, sales, and even everyday relationships. Free samples, unexpected gifts, special favors. None of these automatically means someone is manipulating you, but they can create an invisible sense of obligation that quietly influences your decisions. Now picture yourself walking into 2 restaurants. One is completely empty. The other has people waiting outside. Which one feels like the better choice? Most people naturally choose the crowded restaurant. Your brain assumes that if many people are doing something, it must be safer or better. This mental shortcut is called social proof. Most of the time, it saves us time and effort. But online, social proof can easily be misleading. Likes, reviews, popularity. They don't always reflect real quality. Sometimes they're genuine, and sometimes they're carefully manufactured. Have you ever trusted information simply because it came from someone wearing a suit, holding a microphone, or displaying impressive credentials? This is known as authority bias. Experts often know more than the average person, and expertise is valuable. But our brains sometimes mistake confidence for competence. That's why it's healthy to ask one simple question. What is the evidence? Instead of only asking, who said it? Imagine seeing a jacket priced at $300. Then you notice it's been discounted to $150. Suddenly, it feels like an incredible bargain, even if $150 was never part of your budget. This is called the anchoring effect. Your brain uses the very first number it sees as a reference point. That first number may not actually mean anything, but it quietly changes how every number that follows feels. Now think about these phrases. Only 3 left. Offer ends tonight. Messages like these instantly grab your attention. Why? Because our brains naturally dislike losing opportunities. Psychologists call this loss aversion. In general, people feel the pain of losing something much more strongly than the pleasure of gaining something similar. Sometimes the scarcity is real. Sometimes it's simply a marketing strategy. Either way, urgency makes careful thinking much harder. Have you ever noticed how one anxious person can make an entire room feel tense? That's because emotions spread surprisingly fast. Your brain constantly reads facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language. This helps us connect with other people, but it also means someone else's emotions can quietly become your own. Before reacting emotionally, pause for a moment and ask yourself, is this feeling actually mine? Now consider these 2 statements. This treatment has a 90% survival rate, or it has a 10% mortality rate. The numbers are exactly the same, yet most people react very differently to each one. This is called framing. The way information is presented changes how your brain interprets it. Whenever possible, look beyond the wording and focus on the actual facts. Sometimes influence doesn't come through pressure. It comes through disappointment. You may hear phrases like, "After everything I've done for you," or, "I guess you don't really care." These words create guilt, and guilt can push people toward decisions they wouldn't normally make. Of course, genuine guilt has an important purpose. When we've truly hurt someone, it helps repair relationships. But guilt can also be used unfairly to control behavior. A helpful question to ask yourself is, am I doing this because it's the right choice? Or because I simply want this uncomfortable feeling to disappear? Imagine meeting someone who is attractive, confident, or highly successful. Without realizing it, your brain may automatically assume they're also more honest, more intelligent, or more trustworthy. This is called the halo effect. One positive quality creates a mental halo. That influences how we judge everything else about that person. It happens during job interviews, in relationships, in politics, and even on social media. It's a reminder that first impressions are powerful, but they aren't always accurate. So how can you protect yourself from these influence techniques? You don't need to become suspicious of everyone. Instead, build 4 simple habits. First, slow down important decisions. Your brain makes better choices when it has time to think. Second, pay attention to emotional pressure. Strong urgency, guilt, excitement, or fear can narrow your thinking. Third, ask what evidence supports the claim, not just who is making it. And finally, give yourself a little time. If the decision feels different after the emotional moment has passed, that tells you something important. Here's the interesting part. None of these psychological shortcuts are flaws. They're efficient tools your brain evolved to use in a complicated world. Most of the time, they help you make fast decisions without draining your mental energy. But the same shortcuts that make life easier can also make influence almost invisible. So the next time you find yourself saying yes a little too quickly, following the crowd without thinking, or rushing because something feels urgent, don't immediately ask whether someone is trying to control you. Ask yourself a different question. Did I make this choice consciously? Or did my brain simply take the shortest path? That single question may not stop every influence, but it can help you recognize the exact moment when your decisions truly become your own.